Behind the ornate iron gates and beneath the time-worn stone of Buckingham Palace, the tension is so thick it seems to seep into every crevice of the building, coiling through the ancient corridors like a silent fog. The royal household moves with studied grace, servants in crisp uniforms dusting gilded banisters and arranging fragrant bouquets in marble halls, but beneath this practiced choreography, a storm is gathering, one whose thunder is felt in every footstep, every clipped phrase, every wary glance exchanged in the palace's shadowy corners. At the very heart of this gathering storm stands Queen Camilla, a woman who spent decades learning to read the palace's moods from the sidelines, and who now finds herself at the very center of its tempest. No longer merely the loyal companion at King Charles's side, she now wears the crown, and with it, a responsibility that few can imagine. Her every action, every whisper, every raised eyebrow, carries new weight. And as she begins to flex the powers that come with her hard-won role, she finds herself facing an adversary unlike any she's encountered before, Princess Anne. If Camilla is the newly crowned queen, and is the monarchy's steel backbone, the unwavering constant whose devotion to duty is the stuff of legend. Where Camilla brings diplomacy and adaptability, and counters with rigor and an almost martial sense of responsibility. She is the palace's workhorse, the first to arrive and the last to leave, remembered not for magazine covers but for her tireless service. 4 decades, and has quietly shouldered the burdens that others have fled, her commitment to tradition matched only by her refusal to let sentimentality cloud her judgment. In private, palace staff call her the last of the true royals, a compliment she would likely brush aside. It was inevitable, perhaps, that the two would clash not over petty jealousies or social slights, but over the soul of the monarchy itself. Camilla, practical and shrewd, sees the monarchy as an evolving institution, one that must modernize or risk irrelevance. And, unyielding, believes the very purpose of the crown is to act as a living bridge to the past, a bulwark against the tides of change. The death of Queen Elizabeth II exposed these tensions with merciless clarity. The Queen's love of horses was woven into the fabric of her reign, her stables were sanctuaries of tradition, her beloved animals as much a part of the royal family as her children and grandchildren. Every morning, rain or shine, Elizabeth could be found among the horses, her hands gloved but gentle, her eyes alight with the quiet joy that only true horsemen understand. The stables were filled with stories of Derby winners, favorite mares, foals born during midnight storms. These were not mere possessions, but living links to history. So, when Camilla and Charles made the decision, so soon after Elizabeth's death, to sell off a large portion of the Queen's cherished horses, the repercussions were seismic. To Anne, it was more than a simple estate decision, it was a betrayal. These were not assets to be liquidated for efficiency's sake, but symbols of an unbroken line stretching back through centuries of British history. The horses had carried kings and queens in triumph and in mourning, had graced coronations and stood silently at funerals. Their sale felt, to Anne, like a severing of the family's very roots. Anne's reaction was swift and uncompromising. No longer content to voice her dissent behind closed doors, she began to draw clear lines of demarcation. Camilla found herself subtly excluded from private briefings, her suggestions on matters of tradition quietly overruled. And, typically reserved, became a force of open resistance, her voice icy, her presence commanding. Those in the palace soon learned to read the tension. Conversations that once included both women grew terse, and shared public appearances were marked by stiff smiles and conspicuous distance. For Camilla, the fallout was unexpectedly personal. It was no secret among the royal staff that she had always felt like an outsider, first as Charles's mistress, then as the reluctant Duchess of Cornwall, and now, at last, as Queen. Yet even now, as she walked the palace halls with a crown on her head, there were reminders that acceptance was not absolute. News that Queen Elizabeth's famed jewelry collection, the heirlooms every royal woman covets, had largely been left to Princess Catherine rather than herself, stung. Insiders whispered that Camilla's subsequent willingness to sell the horses was, in part, a response to these silent slights, a practical move, yes, but also a reassertion of her own power. King Charles, meanwhile, was caught in a web of conflicting loyalties. The new king, so long in waiting, has always struggled with the demands of modernity and the expectations of tradition. He has a genuine affection for the horses, a legacy from his mother, But he is also deeply aware of the scrutiny the family faces, calls for transparency, for accountability, for a slimmed-down monarchy fit for the 21st century. To many, his support for the sale marks a sad but necessary step toward that future. But to Anne, and to many loyalists within the palace, it is a step too far, a capitulation to pragmatism over principle. As the controversy spread beyond the palace gates, public reaction was swift and passionate. Newspapers ran editorials mourning the loss of Her Majesty's herd. Social media filled with tributes to the Queen's riding days, old photos resurfacing of a young Elizabeth galloping across Balmoral's green hills. Letters poured into the palace from around the world, urging the royals to reconsider, to honor the Queen's legacy as she herself had lived it, with quiet dignity and steadfast love for tradition. And has responded to the crisis with characteristic resolve. She personally oversees the care of the horses that remain, making unannounced visits to the stables and consulting with long-serving grooms. She ensures that these living symbols of the Queen's reign continue to play a prominent role in royal ceremonies, leading the procession at Trooping the Colour, standing sentinel during Remembrance Sunday. Her public appearances now carry a deeper weight, each one a subtle rebuke to what she sees as the palace's turn toward expedience. Camilla, aware of the rift she has helped to widen, has begun to make overtures toward reconciliation. She has attended a handful of equestrian events with Anne, her presence carefully documented by palace photographers. Statements have been issued praising the Queen's legacy and pledging to maintain the highest standards of animal care. Yet the frostiness between the two women remains impossible to disguise. Friends say that while Camilla values Anne's commitment, she resents being cast as a villain, a role she feels is both unfair and deeply wounding. For the monarchy as a whole, the conflict has become emblematic of a larger existential question. Can the institution adapt without losing its soul? Is it possible to balance the demands of a modern, cost-conscious society with the intangible, irreplaceable value of tradition? Or will each attempt at progress bring with it the risk of alienating those for whom the crown is not merely a symbol, but a sacred trust? As summer turns to autumn, the tension within Buckingham Palace shows no sign of abating. The controversy over the Queen's horses is no longer a private family quarrel, it is a test for an ancient institution at a crossroads. Will Anne's devotion to history prevail, or will Camilla's pragmatic vision shape the future of the monarchy? In the shadowed halls where history waits to be written, one thing is certain: every decision now, no matter how small, will echo across generations, carrying with it the hopes, fears, and memories of a nation watching ever more closely as the Windsors write their next chapter.